my rule update that's coming in July. Some other rule updates, just a brief overview that are coming in July. Just reminder about EBV requirements, updates that we have in Summit County regarding any new services starting and their timelines. Some information on how to get in touch with us at Summit DD when issues come up. Updates, the agency provider compliance tool that the reviewers use when you guys have your provider compliance reviews is changing. So I have some updates for that. NMT documentation, making sure you got the information about multi-factor authentication. Settings rule and personal funds rule. If you were here for the day services meeting, most of the last two items are going to be repeats. So if you would like to leave, you can. But I am going to give it over to Drew to talk about the first topic.
Thanks, everybody. So just a little background, and for those of you who were at the day service meeting, I kind of briefly talked about this, but didn't have an update. But in the middle of that meeting, DoD released what they are calling their final and best proposal for Blueprint. So just a little background, Blueprint has been a work group that was formed right before COVID, looking to transform how vocational habilitation services and kind of the day array employment services are offered in the state of Ohio, with the goal of being able to support people to move from center-based services to competitive integrated employment. That work group took a lot of different forms, obviously through COVID and all the things that occurred with that and the changing kind of landscape of day services providers, how people were accessing day services, that included STEP and community inclusion, all of that. So what really occurred then was the group really focusing on two things: vocational habilitation and a transition out of that service into a new service called VEST, and then really beefing up group employment services, which is a service that the work group really identified is underfunded, underutilized, and can really be a great place for people to gain employment skills, earn money, and be a transition point for like those coming out of high school, but also for those that maybe just need more time before moving into competitive integrated employment. So the work group really worked on that. There have been several proposals put out there, none of which really got across the finish line. However, after a lot more discussion, DoD has put together what they believe is a good proposal based on the work group feedback. So I served on that work group, so I'm going to kind of talk through the current proposal and what kind of DoD is looking to implement. Okay, so the proposal looks at two things: the implementation of BEST, which is basic employment skills training. This will replace vocational habilitation. So we currently have a rule called vocational habilitation, center-based services, kind of that traditional service that has been provided for a long time. BEST would replace that, and then a complete revision to what group employment services look like. DoD is seeking feedback from stakeholders, which is mostly the people that were sitting on the work group. So your trade organizations, the county board system, the ARC, parents, those who sat on that work group. And what I'm sharing with you is DoD is looking to implement these new services July 1 of 2026. So we're more than a year out from when DoD would plan to implement those rules. All right, so let's start with BEST. As I mentioned, it's a BEST. It's a replacement for vocational habilitation. So the goal of vocational habilitation, much like it is for BEST, is to move people along the path to community employment and provide like general employment skills. So, how to engage with a supervisor, how to stay on task, how to dress appropriately, how to engage, with coworkers and the public and all that in a professional manner. The addition to BEST is 2 years. So we all know, we have folks that have been in vocational habilitation for a very long time. It is a legacy service. I mean, I know folks that have been in vocational habilitation, doing piecework, since they graduated school when they're 22 and they're now in their 60s. They really don't want to go anywhere. They want to continue to do this work. It's what's comfortable to them. And DOD is trying to straddle that and also individuals that are younger, that are in vocab, that also have a desire to move into a different type of service. So there's two tiers of BEST. There is tier one, which is those who are seeking to advance on the path to community employment. So those people in paths like 1 to 3, they've articulated an employment goal, and their goal is not to stay in BEST forever, but to move into something else, which could be like vocational, which could be like group employment, career planning, OOD services, those kind of things. Then there's tier two. Tier two is going to be those who are 50 years or older the day before the implementation of BEST. So if you are 50 on June 30th, and you are receiving vocational habilitation and you are not interested in moving beyond that, you would fall into tier two. And tier two is really those that are just kind of looking to continue to receive what we would call like a traditional center-based service. So when we think about that tier two, it's, maintaining current skills, those kind of things. I think anyone who's operating center-based services currently or vocab knows people that kind of fall into this category, where, I think for a long time we've been massaging why they are in vocab. But in reality, what they want to do is just stay there. So, that's what tier two is going to be about. You don't have to be in tier two. If you're 60 and you want to obtain a job, you can be in tier one. No one's going to stop you. But it's for those people that kind of just want the status quo. Also, no additional people will be added to tier two after the implementation of the rule. So if you are 48 when the rule gets implemented and you turn 50 at some point in time, you're not going to go into tier two. You don't go into it. It's just point in time of those who are 50 the day before and receiving vocational habilitation and want to just kind of maintain that service until maybe you go into ADS or you retire or whatever it may be. And the last thing about BEST, and is probably the most significant change from the current vocational habilitation rule, is there is no community integrated component to BEST. They're taking out that small group 4-person integrated service. I will get to where this comes back into play when we talk about group employment, but when we think about the new BEST service, it does not have a CI component where you take people out in small groups of 4 and get the C rate. That is gone. Any questions on what I've shared so far? I'm going to go into the new, what they define as a community integrated setting definition, which is different than what I would say we currently have. But any question on what I have shared till now? All right. So here, and I cut this right from the draft rule because I didn't want to change any of the language. I wanted people to be able to see it for exactly the way it's written in the rule. This is the new DOD's definition of what an integrated setting is. I will summarize it. I assume you will all read it when we send the PowerPoint out. But it is jobs and activities in the community where people are alongside people who don't have disabilities and they're not just paid staff. So if you are taking somebody out for a volunteer activity, the expectation is that they're interacting with people who are not paid staff and also those without disabilities. When we're talking about a paid environment, it's being paid at least at minimum wage, appropriate PTO and other benefits. It's open in a way that is replication of the broader community. So if I own a coffee shop, and I'm articulating it is a community integrated setting. Is it open early in the mornings? Is it open late at night? Is it open on the weekends? Is it open when typical other coffee shops are open? And they're using the word like industry standard for whatever that particular business or setting might be. And then that they have full access to the same community resources and interactions that people without disabilities have. And they have a phrase at each end of one of these 4 components. It says, as evidenced by documentation. So while there's going to be a lot more guidance, because we have more than a year until this gets implemented, what DOD is articulating is they want some sort of documentation or evidence that you're meeting some of these components based on the actual setting to meet the integrated community setting definition. Like I said, I don't have all the answers right now. This just came out last week. And we have more than a year, so there's going to be a lot more training, guidance, conversation around, what DOD is going to be looking for when they look at documentation relative to what a community integrated setting is. Questions? And like I said, we'll send this out so you guys can actually, have this in the PowerPoint. Okay. Now we're going to move on to group employment, and that community integrated setting definition is going to be important for this as well. All right. So group employment, it is services and training activities. So when we talked about the CI piece of vocab, which is now going to become BEST, being removed, it is going into group employment. So group employment is now not just a scenario where you have enclaves or mobile work crews where you are paying individuals minimum wage to just do work. It is now also a service that helps people access the community for employment training opportunities, so like volunteerism, stuff like that. So that's where that CI vocab is moving to. So it is for those services in an integrated setting, for 2 to 8 workers. And I put that in red and I bolded it because the new proposed group employment service limits the group size to no more than 8. And there's a couple tiers of group employment, which we'll get into. Group employment can't take place in a place where vocational habilitation or BEST or facility-based work is occurring. So what they don't want is if you operate a sheltered workshop where you're paying piece rate over in the corner, a group employment site. That's not that, those things are not prohibited. Or they're not allowed. So it has to be in an integrated community business or mobile work crew to be eligible for group employment. If you are doing paid group employment services, they have to be compensated at minimum wage or above. And then the expected outcome of group employment is paid employment and or work experiences for further career development and the attainment of competitive integrated employment. All right, so I will not read all of these, but within the rule, they identify 10 activities that constitute group employment. So job assessments, placement, work adjustment, job analysis, training, benefits management, how to arrange and access transportation, career advancement services. So when we think about some of the CI vocab work that you guys may be doing to help people exposed to the world of work, take tours, volunteer in a work focused way, those are going to fit kind of within those 10 activities, I would presume. All right, so there's 3 distinct service arrangements within the rule for group employment. There's the dispersed enclaves. So, you are in a typical business and you guys have a group of, 2 to 8 folks operating kind of somewhere within that business, kind of doing your own thing with the supervisor I would say that's kind of your traditional group employment scenario that I think of. Then you got your mobile work crews. We all know what those are. We all are landscaping or cleaning, carpet cleaning, whatever those may be. And then you got your regular business or industry. So maybe that's where you're more running an integrated group employment site, where maybe those folks are intermixed with typical workers that work for the business, and you're kind of all doing the same thing, maybe on a manufacturing line or whatever, with the support of a supervisor. So I don't think that changes very much. When we think about what currently constitutes group employment, that feels like it very much fits within what is currently occurring. All right, so this is where we get into our two kind of different payment options. So it's kind of what I'll define as small group and regular. So those payment rates are different, and we'll walk through those. Small groups. So these are groups of 2 to 4 individuals, and they are kind of based on their acuity. So you can have a small group of 2 individuals in acuity assessment group C. You could have 3 to 4 individuals in acuity assessment group A or B. So say you run a group employment, you got 4 people, they're all A's. That's a small group. You got 4 folks that are all in acuity assessment B, or you got a mix of those. You got 2 folks that are assigned an A acuity, 2 folks that are assigned a B acuity, or some mix of that. Then you have the last small group that DODD defines, which is 3 individuals in acuity assessment groups A or B, and 1 acuity assessment group C individual. That also is defined as a small group. Then what DODD defines as regular is any group that's between 5 and 8 individuals. So those are your kind of 2 options in group employment, and they have different payment standards based on that. Any questions up until now? Yeah.
The regular, the group sizes, it doesn't matter what their acuity is.
All right, so here's our payment rates, and I just put daily rates so I can put it on the slide, but there are corresponding 15-minute rates to this as well. And the behavior add-on, medical add-on, all of the things still apply. All right, so here's our small group rates. There is no delineation between A's, acuity assessment A and B groups. They are the same daily rate when we talk about small groups. The C is substantially higher. As we all see, it's $337. And so, like I said, you can have a mix. You can do 2 folks that are assessed at a C, or you could do 4 people that are A, 4 people that are in acuity assessment B, a mix of those, or the last one, which is 3 of any of the A's or B's, and then somebody that's in an acuity assessment group C. And those rates obviously would matter, based on the small groups, and then you would bill appropriately based on those acuity scores for the daily or 15-minute rate if you're delivering the small group. And then below is your daily rates for what we'll call regular, which is those group sizes of 5 to 8. And those are increased to match vocab, or the current vocab rates, which is different than the current GES rates that are in place right now. And like I said, the acuity makeup of the regular group doesn't matter. All right, so I will just put this out there because I think it's important, and things that I feel like are going to have to be discussed prior to the implementation of this rule. So this is really just Drew's thoughts. These are not statewide conversations. I think they should be. As a member of the Blueprint Work Group, I anticipate they might be because I will be bringing them up. But I just think things as we think this through, what do we need to consider as a system? So budget limitations. If you are in group A or B and receiving small group services for whatever, 250 days, that's about 40, almost $45,000. You throw some NMT in there, if you're on a level 1, you are close. You're close to the top of that bucket range. If you are in group C, you're at $84,000, and I haven't even talked about NMT yet. So like that's beyond a level 1. It is currently also beyond the budget limitation for an IO data array C group, which is about 37, 46. So yeah, that's something's gonna have to give, or people aren't gonna go for 250 days. If you look at the IO caps, even if those A or Bs get an override, they're right at the top of that range. So I think, that's gonna have to be a system conversation relative to, county board affordability, match, all of those kind of things. And then I think also just a reasonable conversation, just for clarification, is all of the stuff that we're doing, or you guys are doing, relative to CI, vocational habilitation, does DoD see it all falling under GES? I think that's a reasonable conversation that we also have to have. And I mean, I know people are asking these questions, and I'm sure as we work through this over the next, 13 months, these will be statewide conversations, and definitely need to get some answers and clarification around, how this is all going to work together to support the needs of the people that we collectively serve. All right. Any questions? If you do have questions, you can email me directly. I'm happy to have a conversation about this. I have served on this work group for 5.5 years. So I am well versed in what has occurred since day one. I'll be happy to have a chat with you about this, or clarify anything, or whatever. Just let me know. You can email me, and like I said, I'll be happy to chat about it. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. You guys have probably seen the MUI rule is changing 7.1. There are some pretty significant changes regarding provider responsibilities. So I would very, very strongly encourage you guys to get into a training. DODD's training, our training, another county's training. I put the links up here. Some of DD has some upcoming trainings throughout June, beginning of July. And then DODD has some upcoming trainings that are available at this link. So when we send this out, you can grab those links, sign up. We also, this is actually not coming until September, so we're giving you lots of notice. Matt Klink and one of our 3RN nurses, Karen, are doing a training on how to work with medication administration and MUI and avoid some of those situations, some best practices, some help in that med admin safety area. So that is coming in September. When you get this, the link will be there. If you'd like to go ahead and get that on your calendar, you're welcome. And then these are some other July 2025 rule updates. They don't apply super widely, so I'm just going to give you a snapshot. The link up at the top is where you can find them on DODD's website. You can get the whole rule and read it if it applies to you. But the vehicle modification rule, vehicle modification that used to live in specialized medical equipment and just directed goods and services, it is being taken out of those rules, and it's going to be made into its own rule. So if you are working with somebody that needs vehicle modification, there is some clarification on terms and things like that, but it's all going to be in its own rule. Assistive technology is now going to include service animal training and an annual exam and vaccinations for a service animal. That also was previously in specialized medical equipment and participant directed goods and services. It got pulled out of those rules too. So those specialized medical equipment, participant directed goods and services also being updated to remove those things, but there's no big changes to those otherwise. The waiting list assessment process, that's something that we do at the county board when people say that they need some support. There's a waiting list assessment process that they go through. And that there's a new platform that the state is using for that, and they're adding some clarification to some terms in that one. I know there was a lot of discussion regarding the extended travel. That one, there's going to be further discussion. It has been moved to January of 2026 so that it allows more time for discussion. Previously, it was talking about just putting the responsibilities, talking about responsibilities and procedures when an individual is going to receive paid services outside the state of Ohio. So some HBC or shared living, and they're going to be gone for 4 days. Now they have said it's going to be at least 7 days. So if you're going, you're a parent shared living provider, you guys are going on a 14-day cruise to Hawaii, and you're going to build shared living during that time, this may apply to you next year. We're just going to talk to you about what supports do you need when you do that. Is everything going to be covered? Do we need to talk about, getting something else, or is there going to be a Hoyer lift on the ship? Like, I don't know, whatever it is for that. And then the waiver nursing also has multiple changes. Again, does not apply to everyone, but that is getting a whole new refresh the rule because there's so many changes. So if that is something that impacts you, please look through that rule to see what those specific changes are. Thanks. EVV. So if you have not heard, starting October 1st, claims that do not match, if you have not done them, or they don't match, they're going to be denied. You will not get payment for claims submitted October 1st or after if you don't have a matching clock in, clock out, essentially in EVV. This applies to HPC, participant directed HPC, waiver nursing, and waiver nursing delegation. So if you provide any of those services and you are not using EVV already, you want to go to this link that I can't see. I think it's blacked out. You're going to want to go to, you can go to DODD, search EVV, and go to the Medicaid website. It's going to take you there anyway. It has tons of information on how to get your agency signed up, how to use that system. Right now, today, through the end of September, your claims are not going to be denied, but use this time to fix any issues you have, because you can, it'll show you how to access the report, and it's going to say, hey, something's not matching here. And then you can work through those bugs right now, and those will pay you. You don't want to have those bugs in October and miss out or get delayed payments. Oh, there's the web page. I'm sorry. There's the web page that Medicaid has with a bunch of resources. If you, as an agency, have staff that are shared living providers or HBC providers that provide for individuals that live with them, they may qualify for the lived-in exemption. They do have to submit a form and be approved before they can stop doing EVV. There is information on the one-pager that's linked here. And then they are having daily EVV office hours with Sandata, so you can sign up for those. They also have trainings a few times a month that you can go in and ask questions. So feel free to use those resources if you're running into problems. And then here are some other contacts. If you are using an alternate, you're not using Sandata, they have a separate And then the other ones that tell you, like this one is more for when you are claims questions. Any questions on any of this stuff? The 15-day rule, in order to allow you guys enough time to like prepare to start services with somebody, to train staff, make sure you have all the appropriate certifications and all that. We need to get you the plan. We, county board, need to get you the plan at least 15 days before the service starts. In order to make that happen, the SSA needs to write that plan and send in the authorizations and do any assessments and requests for funding and all that on the back end. And that takes some time as well. So when a new service is selected, if it is not an emergency situation, it's going to be about 30 to 45 days before that service is going to start. And I'm going to ask if you guys can defer to the team, have a conversation about what the start date for that service is going to work for both you, so you guys have enough time for your training and information, and also for the SSA to get that information to you. And like I said, there are exceptions for emergencies. Somebody needs emergency respite or emergency needs to move or something like that. We'll document that we weren't able to meet this rule because of that emergency, but they really do have to truly be emergencies for those folks. Any questions on that? So this one, if you are supporting individuals that live in a congregate setting, and especially if they're being billed in the NRC, so that's our congregate settings, make sure that you are connecting with the SSA. If someone's going to move out and you know that, please make sure the SSA knows that. Please have a conversation with the SSA prior to helping someone move. And then also, if there's somebody passes away, if you are running into that person needing more help than they did before, or less help than they did before, or something massively changes, let the SSA know so that things can be updated. Because what we're running into a lot is that we are finding out later, we're updating later, and then you guys are ending up having to bill wrong and back out of billing, and it becomes a whole mess for you and us. So if you do that, if you let us know and you're not hearing back within 48 to 72 hours, feel free to reach out to that SSA supervisor. We definitely want to address these things and get them to the people and get this so it does not delay your billing or make your billing incorrect. So, and you can also include provider relations on this if you're running into questions. So feel free to include one of us, the provider support at summitdv.org, and that supervisor. If you don't know who that is, you can reach out to us or our main number and somebody can give it to you. Okay. And the SSA list is actually linked there as well. All right. Any questions on any of that stuff? All right. The updated compliance tool, it's gonna be effective in June of this year. The current and future tools are available on DoD's website in the Office of Compliance Information. So if you guys haven't had a provider compliance review yet or not for a while, we're welcome to go there and take a gander at them anytime. The updated tool, a couple of nice things about it is that it clearly identifies there are questions on it that actually only the county board can get cited for. That even though they're on your agency provider compliance tool, there are things that they would actually be citing us for. But it actually is going to specify that, so you can just skip over that and not worry about it. Or, tell us what your things are. And then there was also a lot of guidance added, some clarification on what does those questions mean? What are they looking for on the questions? I added some of the changes, just kind of a short, if you want to talk about it in more detail, just let me know. There are some new behavior support questions. So they want to make sure that all DSPs are trained on somebody's behavior supports prior to working with an individual. And also if it's outlined in the ISP that any chemical, manual, or timeout restraints that you're notifying the guardian that you have documentation to show that you're doing that. And then they added the phrase, if responsible for assisting with personal funds while providing a paid waiver service, to clarify for personal funds that you do not handle someone's personal funds. Again, that wouldn't apply to you. So that into all the personal funds questions. And then NMT, they added, does the documentation include the names of all the individuals in the vehicle? Does it include origination and destination point? And for community integrated employment NMT, does it have the employer's name and the number of miles one way on your documentation? So those are the newer documentation requirements that they're wanting to make sure that you're adding. And then there are 4 non-residential setting rule questions. So any day service providers, you're going to definitely want to pay attention. These are brand new questions. They are questions on access, rights, independence, and choice. I'm going to go over a lot of this later in the presentation. It's really exciting. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to this before your review. They also are going to start issuing citations if you do not use EBV starting in December. So you won't get paid and you will get cited. So definitely use EBV. There is going to be a new question regarding waiver nursing, if that's something that your agency provides, that you're verifying that the nurse is currently licensed. It clarifies that DSPs with 6 points or more are not able to transport individuals, even if you're not billing for that service. And I'm also going to talk about more about this, but there's additional guidance, including on provider-owned and controlled residences. There's additional guidance in those questions on that. There's an additional question ensuring that no more than 4 unrelated individuals reside in unlicensed homes. And assistive technology, if you as an agency provide this, you want to make sure that that you completed training on the use of the equipment. You maintained a list of the installed equipment and all of the things that are required on your documentation, that you have those and are able to show them. So I know that was a lot of questions I just ran through. So does anybody have any questions on any of those? Yeah.
That means by additional, not more than 4 individuals living in our last home. What do they mean by that?
So in any waiver funded setting, only at most 4 unrelated people can live together. So 4 housemates.
Okay, should it be more than 4?
So it can't be more than 4.
Okay.
Yep, you couldn't have like 7. So. Any other questions? For NMT mileage, I know a lot of you guys do this as part of your day services. You want to make sure to grab the updated template or add to your documentation sheets to include odometer readings. That changed in January. So you want to make sure you're adding that to your documentation if you haven't already. And this is only NMT miles, not NMT per trip. You probably received numerous emails about this, but I'm going to tell you in one more place. In order to go into PNM, you need to set up multi-factor authentication. If you've already done that, ignore this. Don't need to do anything else. If you have not done that, you want to go in and do that now while you're thinking about it, because the next time you try to go into PNM to recertify or add service or do something, you're not going to be able to get in until you do this. So the instructions are linked here on the bottom of this. They're in all the emails that you got, but you just want to, don't let that go. Take a few minutes and set that up so that you don't get locked out. So that'll be really frustrating when you go to recertify. All right, any Any thoughts, questions? Okay, so I'm gonna go over the settings rule and some pay information. Again, if you were here for the day service meeting, I won't be offended if you wanna leave because we went over the same information then. So, all right, settings rule, an individual, all individuals receiving home and community-based services have the opportunity to access age-appropriate activities, engage in meaningful employment and non-work activities, and pursue activities with persons of the individual's choosing and in settings not created exclusively for individuals with disabilities. So that is the pulled straight from the rule. I have linked the rule there for you. And then kind of UGB has kind of used that and expanded. What does that mean? How does that work in your service environment? And this does apply both residentially and non-residentially. So you want to be thinking about the services you provide. Are you providing shared living or HBC? Are you providing ADS services? It applies across the board. They break it into 5 buckets: access, options, rights, independence, and choice. That the services have to have all of those components, every service. And what access means is that the setting needs to be fully integrated into the community, allow individuals the opportunity to seek employment in community integrated settings, or in the case of ADS, engage in community life, or residential supports, engage in community life. Allow the person to have control over their personal resources, their clothes, their furniture, their money, their gift cards. And then receive services in the community to the same degree of access as individuals not receiving Medicaid. So they can go to the Acme down the street because they live in that community just like everyone else. Some examples would be assisting someone to explore new interests. So this could be on the day program side, where you're exploring new interests either in your facility, out in the community, or residentially, same. At home, you're going to try out, I don't know, a new knitting club or something, because that's what the individual wants to try out. While you're doing those things, you're building relationships with other people, including people without disabilities, based on the interest. So that person wants to try out knitting, or you think they might like knitting, so you're going to take them and give it a go. You're going to try to help them develop relationships with the folks there. That access is also, you're supporting individuals towards the goals that they want in the community where they live. And the individuals are choosing their own activities and who they socialize with. We're going to give to choice, but this is also that they can say, I know I told you I liked knitting. I'm all done with knitting. I don't want to do that right now. I know we're on the way. They can do that, change their mind anytime. Individuals are free to move around, come and go as they please, and visitors would be welcome. So they want to have their girlfriend or their aunt come over. They want to have their, they want to go over to their friend's house. That is absolutely fine. They're located within areas for greater community access. So you're not purposefully having a program or a location that is like 19 miles away from everything else. That if it's important to the individual to be on the bus line or something, and we're trying to connect them with access that way. That you're giving individuals access to information on using public transportation. Also about community events, rather than having community events come to them. Like for some individuals, that is great, and that is a step towards getting out there. And that is, we're going to talk about modifications in a little bit. So that can still happen for some individuals, but the default is going to be that you're going to go out to community events out where they occur. Individuals are supported in employment opportunities, and they have control over their personal funds. So we're going to assume that somebody is able to maintain their own money, pay their bills, do their thing, unless the ISP has assessed them to say that they can't. Options is that individuals choose their settings and they know how to request a change. So you guys as providers, your role in that is to make sure to tell them if they're frustrated, they're telling you they're frustrated, they're telling you they want this other thing, that you're saying, hey, I'm going to let your team know, I'm going to let your SSA know, so they can help you with the free choice provider process. You do not have to take them. You don't have to do the things. You got to make sure that the SSA that can help them with that knows that they've expressed that. Rights is ensuring a person's right to privacy, dignity, and respect, and freedom from coercion or restraint. So some examples is private information is kept secure, not in front of others. So some of the examples that DOD has given is, putting people's medical stuff on the refrigerator. Like you're going to want to keep that in a more private way. That's easy to access, that, if EMS comes, you can grab the binder, but it's not like plastered to the refrigerator so that everybody's friends that come over can see it. Communication is respectful. A secure place to store an individual's items. So it does not have to be locked, but the individual can have a secure place that people aren't repeatedly stealing their lunch. They're not repeatedly having their stuff taken, moved, messed with, that they have a secure place to store the things. You would surely, sorry, I don't know what that word was. You will freely share information if the individual feels that their rights are being violated, on how they can make a complaint about that, who they can make a complaint to, and that the individual would not have any consequences for doing that. Individuals are given choice and never forced to do an activity they don't want to do. They don't have physical restraints. And they have privacy and dignity in personal activities, restroom, as much as changing, those type of things. You also, as far as the information kept private, when you're having conversations with, actually might be on the, when you're having conversations with other DSPs, other people at your agency, you want to be respectful. You're having conversations with people that need to know that information, and that you're having it in a private way so that not a bunch of other people who don't need it hear it. That, you're maintaining privacy. Independence is the setting supports the individual's autonomy and independence in their choices, daily activities, and their environment, and who they interact with. So the individual is allowed to be who they are in their setting. There's no unnecessary locks, gates, fences, or barriers. That they have independence in your environments. If you're in a facility type environment, you're gonna have multiple gathering spaces, some large, some loud, some quiet, maybe outdoor, indoor, multiple activities to choose from. Individuals are able to choose their own activities and who they do them with and where they do them. And then activities are age appropriate, match their outcomes, and then the desires of the individuals and skills and abilities. So you're going to be thinking through and talking to them. What are you guys are going to get to know them very quickly, I'm sure, if you probably already do, but what are their skills, what are their abilities, what are their interests, and you're going to develop activities around those things. And you're going to be able to speak to how you develop those activities, and they're going to match their outcomes and the things that they want to do. So you might have a wide plethora of activities going on, and there are things that you totally didn't do a year ago because the folks are interested in different stuff, and you're going to tailor it to each individual person. Right. Choice. Individuals have choice regarding their services and supports and who provides them. So the choice of the support care staff within your agency as much as possible. So obviously, if everybody loves one particular person, they can't all work that person every day. But respecting that they have that choice, that they have that opinion, and trying to make that happen in a safe and healthy way. Given access to all available services, again, that you're not telling, you're not leaving out the information that there's other providers out there or other services that might work for them now that they maybe have, you know, done your program, grown, and they're ready for the next step. You support them to make their decisions. Individuals are understood, listened to. The staff that are working with them, get to know them. They know what they need. And people are able to be themselves fully when they're receiving services from you. They don't have to hide part of who they are or pretend to be somebody. And they're allowed to change their choices at any time. Any questions on this so far? All right. So if any of those things, if it would be unsafe for the individual you are supporting to maybe have any visitor at any time, then that would be restricting something in the settings rule. You're going to want to talk to the team about why you have that concern and talk to the SSA, and they will follow the HRC Human Rights Committee process to potentially get a rights restriction approved. In CMS rules, they're called modifications. So you'll see that language in some of the new documentation from DODD, but you'll also see it referred to as rights restrictions. They are used interchangeably. But you can't restrict that thing, not allow the individual to have those visitors, in some other way restrict the person, and unless it is an urgent health and safety that you're then going to refer to unapproved behavior support until you go through this process. Some examples of times where you might think that we need to look at if this is necessary is restriction on the ability for the individual to determine their own schedule and activities. Restriction on interactions with other individuals, restrictions on accessing food, restrictions in attending community events, or restrictions for anything due to their behavior. And some of the things, as you're thinking about this rule and maybe ways to grow or do what you're doing a little bit differently, is to think about how you're choosing your activities. Are they made for the individuals that you're serving? Are the individuals you're serving really bored? So if they are, maybe thinking through what else can we try here? Are activities related to what the individuals want? Are the activities related to what the individuals want to get out of the service? So when the SSA and they came and you guys had a team meeting and you talked about outcomes, is what you guys are doing what the team and what the individual wanted to get out of service? How do you explore interest when an individual is refusing to do the activities you're offered, even if they're things they'd like to do before? And then, is your environment physically accessible to the individual in front of you? Your environment does not have to be physically accessible to everyone, but if you're going to be providing services, that individual needs to be able to fully access that entire environment. Any questions on that stuff? All right. On this, you want to make sure that the services you're providing match what's outlined in the ISP and the authorization and what you're billing for. So all those things have to match. So, for example, if the ISP says that you're authorized to provide adult day support, ensure that you're providing adult day support and not vocab. And that when you're billing for adult day support, and you're not paying the person a wage because that's only allowed in vocab. So just make sure you're checking what you're authorized for, what's in the plan, and what you're billing, and making sure those all line up. If when you get the ISP, it is not the things that you understood at the annual meeting, the outcome is different, the things in the services supports are things that you're like, I don't know what this means, I don't know how to do this, or can you give me more information? please reach out to the SSA so that we want you guys to have the information. That's the whole purpose of the document, right? So let us know that there's some confusion there. We will clarify. We can update that ISP at any time. And again, if you're not getting responses, reach out to their supervisor, reach out to us in provider support. All right. And then more settings. This is specific to residential settings. So that the settings rule also outlines that what residential settings are permissible and the needed arrangements for those different settings. Provider-owned settings, and most of the time are not allowed. So you cannot be, as an agency, you cannot own or rent a residence and provide labor services to an individual you're providing supports for. A provider also cannot sublease. They can't lease an apartment under their name as the agency, and they cannot then sublease to the individual. Also prohibited is a provider paying part or all of the rent, utilities, food for the individual. That's considered incentivizing and not allowed.
Yeah, what if in that setting where like the client doesn't have any funds at that moment?
You want to talk to the SSA because you as a provider cannot do that.
Okay,
And the SSA will help them to explore some resources to have funds or to have their needs met.
okay.
Most of the individuals' income
Mhm.
only allow them to live in certain types of places or settings.
Mhm.
So what about those individuals? What about those individuals that do not make 2 or 3 times the rent amount? So what are they supposed to do?
Talk to the SSA so they can help them get the supports they need. Oftentimes there's things set up for individuals to share services for that, so they could also be sharing rent and utilities to help their money go farther. We can help them get in touch with HUD or AMHA if that's appropriate for them. We can help them we have somebody specific here that works for Summit County that can help them connect them with housing that is more affordable. He works with landlords on
So we
that.
still have a liaison here.
We do, yes, Tanner, if you've worked with him.
It seems like a lot of individuals won't have any.
Yes, it is I'm not gonna lie and say that it is not a concern that we share. Like what you're saying, I'm not saying that it is not an issue. I am, but
And I know you guys didn't make the rule up,
we
but
did
they're
not.
not thinking like a lot of landlords don't understand or don't know how. They think that it's something different to rent to our individuals, and they don't want to put a lease in their name because they think of other things they don't know about the community of individuals we serve. So it just seems like there's going to be a lot of homeless individuals.
Yes, we definitely do not want that. We want to work with them to, if you're in these situations, to get out of these situations. We know that this is not a solve overnight problem. It's where folks live. This is arrangements and leases that have been signed or have been done. We want to work with you guys to get you out of this, because I don't want you guys to have a provider compliance review. I have seen providers already be cited for, with that last one, incentivizing paying for the rent for folks, for subleasing, and for not, for owning homes and then also providing services to them. So I don't want you guys as providers, because then we have to fix it within a very short time frame for you to continue to provide services. So like, that's not a good outcome either. We want to help fix it now, and planfully. So, yeah.
So I know of an individual where like he doesn't receive any social security income currently. He's just received it, but the provider's been paying the rent for the property because there's other individuals living there. So the rent's been paid in full. And like now they're like, okay, well, can he pay back the rent for that time? But technically, like the rent's been paid for him in this scenario. the rent had to be paid either way,
Mhm.
but it wants to be paid back now because he's been living there for a certain amount of time. Would that be considered paying for his rent then? And it, because yes, it was paid for, but that rent had to be paid either way since it is like multiple people live in that home.
Right. It depends on the situation and kind of the outcome. Does he pay it back or not?
Right, that's the scenario that
yes.
we're in now, like he just got his funds. I'm like, so I do like some money management for clients. And then they're like, I'm like, okay, if you provide the receipt, yes, you can receive the funds back because you did provide it, but it kind of also breaks the rule at the same time.
Yep, and you wanna, in a situation like that, that would almost be like a provider might purchase groceries for somebody and then send you the receipt, and that's allowable. That is not the preferred way to do things, but it is allowable. So, but you wanna have an agreement about that. You want that to be in the plan. You want the entire team to know about that is happening. And that the expectation is that he's gonna pay it back.
Yeah, in this scenario, we didn't know if Social Security was going to give back the backdated funds. So in that case, like, everything that was being purchased, like, he needed to eat, he needed all of those items.
And that is definitely, if that's coming up, please let the SSA know. So
Yeah,
we
the
can-
FSA was aware,
Okay,
like, I'm waiting for the check to come in for the funds. So I've asked the provider, can you please provide the documentation? Because we will not give out the funds to them until there is proof that it was paid. I obviously believe that the rent has been paid, but was it paid for his portion
Yeah.
separately than the other people? That's the type of things that like I'm requiring, but I know that they provided multiple things for this gentleman at this point in time.
Yeah.
And I can't say that we had like a provider hasn't paid for things in the past, and
Yeah.
it happens, and it's because it's usually, they usually need the items.
yes, yeah, I am 99.9% of the time, this is not, so it's called incentivizing. It's not because providers are like, please don't leave me, and you're trying to get them to stay. It's because you're just trying to help individuals.
Yeah, they need
Yes.
groceries, they need food.
Yes.
How else? Like, the food bank doesn't provide enough. Like, for this individual, I was going to the food bank as like, I'm not the provider wasn't doing it, the gentleman needed food. So I was going and like,
Yep.
the food is not gonna feed him for the week that I was getting it for. Like, it wasn't even possible. I was maybe getting like one meal, maybe two.
Yeah.
Out of it. And it's like, okay, well, they have to get him food for the rest of the week. Like, he still needs to eat.
Yeah.
He still needs proper shoes that fit him, and
Yep.
they have to provide those items for him and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the purpose of these is twofold. We don't want that to fall on the providers, because you guys are not being reimbursed. And also, we don't want the individual to feel that they cannot, the thought process behind it. They don't want the individuals to feel that they can't leave your services because they're now indebted to you. Or, you control those things, and so they can't leave. So we want to avoid situations like that. We also, with subleasing and stuff, we have had providers get into messes where they have leased. The individual has free choice to leave whenever they want. They leave halfway through the first month, and the provider is on the hook to pay for another 11 and a half months that they aren't going to receive anything.
Yeah.
And we don't want providers in that situation either. So we want to try to work forward to correct those things, give people the supports that they need, not putting that back on you guys as providers. Yes, you were next, and then I'll get you.
This is a very difficult situation.
Mhm.
It needs to actually be talked about. It
Yes.
needs solution. When they are advertising, when they are asking for providers to take a client, they are not ready to work with a provider and the client to get a place. They want a place that is already available.
Yeah.
How is the provider get automatically place available? Definitely the provider is signing for it or paying for it or doing whatever the provider can do to keep a house ready for a new client. So until they change how they address things, provider will always have to do the wrong thing. The wrong thing means that paying for the place ahead of time, because that is the only way you can get an emergency client or to get a client, a new client, because they are not going to say, okay, I have chosen you to be the provider, but I'm going to work for you, work with you with the SSA and the family to get a place for the client. No, they want a place that is already available. Where do they think the provider is getting that place?
I hear you.
Mhm.
Like,
Where is he getting the
Where, yeah,
place?
where's that home for?
So-
Where's the whole?
Like that
coming
one client, like,
from?
thankfully
Is a
they have-
provider a landlord? No. Secondly, if a provider have a place that is a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, and one of the client leave, those clients in that house cannot provide, cannot pay. What do you expect the provider to do? When we start taking care of clients, they become like our family, they become like people we care for.
Mhm.
So what do they want the providers to do? So if I'm being cited because I am working hard, supporting people who are like my family, and I'm being for compliance, it's painful. Because I have taken care of somebody that could not even eat. His SSI was small, a little. And how do I let the person go hungry? So that when I provide for the person, then I am being cited. It's very, very painful.
Yeah,
You know, I'm trying to cry now because it's painful. Because we work with clients and we see how some of them suffer.
yes, yes,
So if I'm being cited because I am working, I am supporting, it's painful.
yes. And I want to tell you this and we want to work it out so that you don't get cited.
Before
And
they can solve that, then they have to take care of the main problem, the source. They have to get a source done first. They should not expect providers to automatically get places. Then the government should start getting places. If they want to prevent providers from doing what we do,
Yes.
because we are not just going because we are going to make money. No, some of us are going because we want to provide care, we want to take care of people. It's the love that we have. That's why we try to get into it, not just because we want to make money.
yes,
And then if I'm doing all this running up and down and being cited for it, it's not
That's
our fault. So we should not be being cited for trying to support our family. They are our family, even though technically they are not, but technically they are. In a way.
Yeah. I feel, because like I have a client where somebody else in the home moved out. Well, it's not their fault. The client went back into facility care because they couldn't be in the home. And now they have to pay, they went like, okay, rent part in their county, they're not in Summit County, that part's covered because each room is rented out individually, but now all of the household bills fall upon them.
Yeah,
And like maybe before they were splitting up meals together, now they can get it because they get like SNAP benefits now, but before, like now all of their bills just doubled in a month. And like they had no funds to prepare for that. Thankfully, this individual had funds in a stable account to be there for them, but like those funds, after if nobody else moves to that home, are gonna be exhausted pretty quickly because all the bills now are duplicated. And then it takes a while to get like HEAP or PIP benefits put in place. And it changes once somebody else moves into the home again, and those benefits are now lost or have to be re-gotten all over again.
yes, yes. And I hear you guys, and none of these are easy situations. We have proactively been working with landlords to try to have some things on board. But do we have housing available today for every person that might be in this? No. But we are working proactively to get you guys out of these situations. So if you are approached for this, we do have someone that works with landlords that can try to help set up the leases properly. We do have some community resources that can help folks. You probably know about them as a money manager. We can get people in touch with some resources that they can pay, that you're not paying for this month after month after year after year. And like I said, I know that providers are doing this out of the kindness of their heart because they care about the individuals they're serving. That's why they're in this field. We want providers like you. We don't want to bankrupt providers like you, and we don't want you guys to end up in bad situations. That's why we're talking about it now.
if I'm being cited, I'm gonna take it anywhere, because if I am taking my own money, not because I want to, but I'm compelled to, and you, because of compliance, yes, who writes the laws? It's people who write the laws, and laws are being there and can be amended. And then if situations are not being done at your part, then those side providers. if you have not got things in a way that you think you'll be able to protect people with disability, and then you have providers who are being working, I shouldn't be cited for it. I'm just saying, for me, if I'm cited, I'm gonna argue about it because I don't want to pay for them, but I have to.
Well, and what I'm saying, you no longer have to. We will find other
It will take
resources.
time, it's not
It will
gonna,
take
it's not gonna pay forever.
It's a transition.
Transition is gonna take a long time.
Some of the funds you can't receive until after they've been purchased. So like I have some, that's not in Suffolk County, but I have a gentleman, he got the community transition funds, but it was after he already moved. His check before was $30. How is he supposed to secure a home unless we paid for it? Like,
So like in that community transition funds, like that's what that's set up for.
Yeah.
So there is an agreement, like you know that the money's coming. So that is one of the things that is trying to address this issue. So it is a slow moving system. Changes have to be vetted and they are slowly coming, but it is not perfect. So I will be the first to acknowledge to you that it's painful and it's not perfect. You clearly care about people that you support. Please don't say this.
For that one, that's my say.
Yeah, what Mary is trying to articulate is, these are the current rules, we didn't make them, DOJ
guys
is going to cite you.
I know, we just,
And here's the thing, if you do not fix them, they will take your certification away. That's the end of the day.
that's one way I'm angry about it. It's not your fault, it's not our fault, but some people are sitting somewhere in their offices writing rules and laws without finding way to solve that rules and laws. It's taking time. It's taking time now.
So what I will say is, in those situations where you end up in those situations where you feel like you need to provide financial compensation, keep receipts and talk to the team. If you don't feel like you are getting feedback from the team, come to us. Because once you get cited, we're not gonna do anything about it.
Yeah, I know.
So while I appreciate the conversation and I get it, and for a long time, we relied upon providers to find residential settings for people, 100%. We didn't have residential resources. We didn't have Courtney, we didn't have Tanner, we didn't have Pam to kind of help this process along. So we are unwinding years of relying on providers to do work you should have never had to do in the beginning.
But
But now we're here and we don't want anyone to be cited. We don't want situations where you guys are gonna end up having certification revocations because you can't unwind out of those POCs until you do what the rule says. So come to us, let's work it through. We'd rather do it proactively. And it's just gonna take a minute to unwind a legacy of kind of doing it backwards. That's just the reality of the situation. So that's ultimately what we're trying to communicate here is it's coming and we've already seen providers get cited.
But that's also frustrating when we're still getting things in the portal to receive a client or an individual. We have to have this already in place. I get that you guys are trying to unwind things, but at the same time, we're still having to find homes for these people in different counties as well. Cause I get stuff in the portal from Cuyahoga County, Mahoning County, asking for a place for these individuals to stay at. So it's just very contradicting, this whole thing. And it's very frustrating because we get a slap on the wrist, whether it's from the state or from you guys in particular for doing it the way we're doing it. But that seems like it's the only way to do it right now.
So I think respite is one thing. When someone's on the portal for,
No, it's for congregate, not for respite.
when people are on the portal for congregate,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately should not be the provider's responsibility to locate a spot for that. Now, if it's one person and you already have a congregate site with like 2 or 3 people and you're adding a fourth, that's one thing. But if there is people coming together to form a new congregate, they are looking to you guys for the service, not the home. And if you are running into situations where they are putting that work on you, let us know. Because that's not the way it should be. They should be connecting with Courtney, they should be connecting with Tanner and Pam to locate that residential property to invite you in to provide the service.
Okay, because that's not what's currently happening, but that's nice to know to reach out to you guys if that is happening. Because it's also times where I can reach out and ask like, hey, is there anybody needing services? Da 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 da. And they're asking for a list of properties that I currently have. So it's kind of frustrating and it's contradicting a lot. So.
Yeah, we are certainly reaching out to providers and to get an understanding of their vacancies, because we often have people who are not connected to other people that are looking to move into already established congregate settings, 100%. And we will continue to do that because there's not always a situation where new people are coming together to form a new congregate. So we want to know what vacancies are out there in already established respite situations and congregate, for sure. But in the sense of new congregate getting formed, that the finding of that property should not fall on the provider. You had a question.
Yeah, but it was just, we've seen a couple of slides prior, that they have the freedom to choose who they hang with, where they go, what they do, what they eat. But you mean to tell me they don't have freedom to sign a lease with who they want and how they want? I just still think, and I understand that you guys are just giving us the information from DOD. I just don't think that that was thought about, just like it was thought about that we have that very long ISP, but that's another thing. But I just don't think that that was thought about, because you're gonna lose a lot of providers, because the people that run the 24/7 congregates, and it's in their names, and people that you never had issues, never heard anything about me, you never had issues with people. So now you're gonna have people that just, they didn't say it was a transition period, they didn't say if there's a form that the guardian or the individual will sign that says that they understand that this lease is a sublease and the lease is this and this. What's the transition?
Oh.
So this rule was enacted actually in 22. They gave a transition that these had to be fixed by the end of August of 23.
Okay.
They have given lots and lots of additional DOD, that is they.
Yeah.
Given lots and lots of information since then. We have presented about it, and we're trying to get the word out, because now providers are really getting excited. And we want to work with you to fix these. These are not at all us slapping you on the wrist, telling you you are horrible people in any way, shape, or form. No. This is another way of like, hey, there's this rule. I want to make sure you guys know about it and be proactive. Let's fix it. Let's find a way that works within the rules and works for the individuals that we are all trying to serve. So, these are Medicaid funded services. So Medicaid determines that providers, it's a conflict for them to do these things. There on the next couple slides, there's a little bit of kind of like flexibility ways that we can do this that I'm gonna get to in just a second. And so like this is that the agency can't own it. Your agency can't own it, but you as a human could own it. But then you have to put some other things in the lease. So you cannot sublease, but you could own it and you could lease at a market value, or you as a human could lease.
Yeah, not your company.
Not your company. Okay. All right, so that's called provider controlled, not provider owned. So the landlord is an immediate family member of the owner or a management employee. The landlord employs a person who's also an owner or management employee. Board member of the provider is also on the board of the landlord company. The residence is owned partly or entirely by the owner or management employee of the provider. And the landlord is an owner or management employee of the provider. Those last two are kind of same variations, same thing. But so if you, like I said, you as a human own it, or your spouse or your child, that is allowable. It's just considered provider controlled. It is your agency as a whole cannot. In these situations that are provider controlled, a lease is required. So with a community landlord, that is outside our jurisdiction. They should have a lease. That is renters law. They should have these things in place. We will help people advocate for those. But as a provider, you are required to have a lease in as part of your provider responsibilities. And the lease has to have a statement saying that this is provider controlled and how it is. How are you related to the individual served and the landlord? Like, what is that relationship? So it's on paper. It's available for all the people in this agreement. And a statement that the individual may choose any provider to deliver home and community-based services. So if you're doing that and you are, it's in provider controlled, the individual 3 months in could say, I no longer want to receive services from your agency. I'm going to honor my lease. I'm going to keep paying the rent to you as a human, but I'm going to go get services from this other agency. And that is allowable. That has to be in the lease. DODD does have a template that you can add to the lease in those. And the link is there. I know we're over time, so I'm trying to. There are some correction options. So we've talked about multiple of these already. So the first one is, can the individual lease directly? Meet with, reach out to the SSA. They can connect with Courtney and Tanner. We can talk to the landlord. We can help navigate that situation. Sometimes, like you said, landlords just don't understand. And sometimes we can explain the situation and they're okay. Sometimes family member can ask or can assist. Sometimes the person can get a reasonable accommodation. Sometimes we can help find housing, connect ABJ, like I said. If the person has no other options and the landlord is unwilling, providers are allowed to do what's called a lease guarantor. This kind of puts a lot of liability on a provider. So ultimately the provider, it's not a co-signature because it's not also yours. You're just guaranteeing that they're going to be paying the rent and any other fees. So this is something that they have allowed to occur, but you have to really think through that liability on you as a provider if you choose to do that, because you're essentially just agreeing to pay, but you're not getting, you can't move in and whatnot. For shared living, a residential agreement is required if the people are not related. So if you're a shared living provider for your child or your sister, you do not need a residential agreement. You're more than welcome to have one, but you don't have to. But if the people living together in shared living are not related, you have to have a residential agreement. That agreement gives, there's a template on DODD's website, and it kind of has all the information. You can make your own, you don't have to use theirs, but it has to have all the same required information. There is a lot more information on DODD's website about leases, residential agreements. They have a beautiful decision tree about whether something's provider owned or controlled that they just came out with. You are welcome to explore that further because this is an area where we're going to have, I know, lots more conversation. So it's definitely something to be aware of. I don't want anybody to be caught on unknowing. All right, and I'm sorry, there was a question online. Was there a different question?
Yes, Christine has 3 questions. The first one, she says, so ADS cannot receive a paycheck for a day ab, for example, if they clean for an hour.
No, that would have to be vocational habilitation. So you could, if the person, you'd have to talk to the team, have it authorized. But if that person wants to work and do work skills, they would need to be doing vocational habilitation for that hour. And then they could go back and do ADS, but she would have to unit bill. She wouldn't be able to bill the daily rate.
Second question, can a provider sign the lease if it's a kid's home? They cannot sign underage.
That is a specific conversation with the team of who would sign. It wouldn't be the provider though.
Third question. Also, can a provider own the property if they use the DoD leases, making it clear that they own it and that they choose a new provider, they can continue to lease it?
The agency cannot own it, but the provider, Joe Smith or whoever, they could technically own it, or their spouse or their family member. That would be considered provider controlled.
There's another question from Shonda. I want to clarify that EBB isn't for group home settings.
The only time it is if you have a DBU exemption. So if a person that you're supporting is the costs are over $800 a day, you're gonna have to bill that in units. So that would require EBB. But typically if you're billing an MRC, no. If you guys are open to staying, I will go over the rest of this information. We are way over. All right, personal funds. So this is an individual's funds. It does not matter the source. It can be their income, their social security, gift card that their grandma gave them, any income or anything worth money that they have. Some guidelines in this rule are providers and their family members cannot accept gifts from individuals served or alone. They cannot buy items or sell items to the individual served. And this does include small items. This does include Girl Scout cookies. You can get prior written approval from the team if there was some kind of special circumstance. Yeah, the provider's going to sell them a bed or something, and that is a really good deal and the whole team's aware, but you want to make sure that there's a written approval for it before that happens. And then providers cannot use an individual's funds to cover the cost for another individual or for themselves. So you're stopping at home on your way back from a doctor's appointment, and both the individuals in the group home want a Burger King, but only one has cash with them. You can't use the other person's funds to pay for their stuff.
Can I ask a really silly question?
Yeah.
What if I'm like, hey, this person needs laundry detergent, we have surplus, would that be considered a gift towards them?
Technically, yes.
Great. I'm like, hey, we have extra. We don't want anything.
Because you're a provider, technically, yes. If it was anyone else, that's fine. But because you were their provider. So you could give it to somebody that you are not a provider for, and even if they're in our system, and that's fine. So if you have a surplus of laundry detergent, donate it to another agency. You're good.
Great.
You are within rule. So I'm just telling you the
Yeah,
actual.
I was just wondering, because I'm like, this is a necessity, like, if we could help, like, if we have extra donated to us to give to our client.
There's actually, if like legitimately, if you have, there are a couple of organizations in Summit County that do specifically things that are not covered on the EBT card, laundry detergent, toilet paper,
Yeah,
those
like,
things.
hey,
We can tell you who they are, and that stuff will go to good use. It will go to individuals served in our system. But we have multiple organizations that do that.
fantastic.
And on the flip side, if you have individuals that need those things, they can access them through those organizations. All right, so I know that you guys are providers for a large swath of different services, but for each account type that individual has, you're gonna have to keep a written log of it. So this is gift card, this is a whole bank account, this is you have, I don't know, $15 of their cash. Any of their personal funds, you have to keep a record of it. The record has to include their name, where you got the money. You got it, mom handed you $15, you got a check sent to you, the individual gave you their money to hold, whatever it was. The signature of the person depositing the funds, unless it was electronically deposited to you. And then when the funds were withdrawn from your account or spent or whatever, the amount, where they went, and then the signature of the person that took the funds. Again, unless electronically withdrawn. For checking and savings accounts, you're gonna have to reconcile with the most recent bank statement for any cash, gift cards, things like that. You need to reconcile those as well. You're gonna call the number on the back of the gift card, make sure that there's still 2732 on it that was on there last month. Cash counts, you're gonna count it up, make sure it's still that amount. You're gonna verify the reconciliation on the document. And then the person that does that's gonna sign and date that form. Receipts are required if you are purchasing things on behalf of an individual. So if you are going to the store and you're buying in all their groceries, you're definitely gonna wanna keep a receipt. The receipts typically are gonna have the items purchased, the date, and the amount of the expenditure. If you're in a situation, you're purchasing something for somebody and they don't have a receipt, laundromat, county fair, whatever, you're just gonna want to write yourself a receipt. Does not have to be fancy, doesn't have to be on fancy paper, just what money was spent, where it was spent. You wanna cover these, the item, the date, and the amount. If an individual is given their own money to spend, receipts do not have to be maintained. That individual might want to keep receipts. Maybe the team's like, hey, that'd be super helpful, and you encourage them to, but they don't have to. It's their own money. They can do with it what they want, and they don't have to keep receipts. You can ask them to sign your ledger that, like, if you got sent a check for $75 and you were giving them $15 because they need it today and they asked for it, they could sign your ledger to say that they were the ones that received that $15. And then this is what we we're talking about earlier. The provider should not routinely pay for things for the person. You should, whenever possible, assist the person to pay. So that is, I'm going to stand next to you while you were checking out, help you with that process. To what we were talking about earlier, making large purchases, don't pay for them in advance for the person unless it is absolutely necessary. And then you get paid back. Yes, that you get reimbursed, but all the transactions need to be properly documented. DUDD has a couple different forms. This one is a transactional record. So this is more going to be like if you have cash, your day service, or NMT provider even, that you have a little bit of money that you're given to the day service, you're going to have this type of record is probably going to be good for you. This larger one that you probably have a hard time even seeing all this stuff on it is more for somebody who you're managing a bank account. These are, again, just tools. You do not have to use them, but you do have to include all those items that we talked about. Yeah.
What's the difference between personal funds and money management?
Money management is a paid service. You do have to take a test or have certain qualifications in order to qualify to bill that service. Personal funds applies across the board. You do not have to have those certifications. So, but any provider who at all interacts with somebody's money is responsible for the personal funds rule and to keep a ledger. So if the individual that you are supporting keeps all their own money in their purse, the wallet, the room, whatever, and you don't do anything with it, you don't need to worry about it. But if you keep their money in an envelope and give it to them, if you keep their money, and disperse it every once in a while, or help them at the checkout because they usually lose their stuff or whatever, then you do have to keep a ledger.
So there's no like dollar threshold of if you're managing a certain amount of money.
Nope.
And managing their personal funds is basically just an unpaid service.
It's part of, it's kind of like all the other requirements of providers. It is part of your documentation requirements to do the service. The ISP should identify what things that person needs help with personal funds from you. So if you are providing day service, they need help checking out. They need help, counting out cash, but they're fine with the debit card, whatever it is. Versus a residential provider that, I need help counting up my stuff and keeping it in my dresser, whatever that is for that person, the ISP should identify.
And then there is, so like in our day service program, we got a big grant to help pay for like some of the expenses and stuff of individuals going out in the community. So we're just kind of passing that through and we're paying for it as our organization, but we were reimbursed by a grant. So I just want to make sure we're not out of compliance in terms of like provider paying for
You need
stuff.
to document that because there's a
Yeah.
threshold
Is
per
there?
person. I
Okay.
recently had a provider that got a grant to pay for like community outing.
Yeah.
They got cited.
What is the threshold? Do you know?
She just like, I will actually get you the citation
Okay.
and the language.
Okay.
Because I was unaware of it until they got
Okay,
cited.
yeah.
Could I get that also?
Yeah, the
Like,
the suggested solution is that grant organization just keep the funds and disperse it to the individuals rather than. Okay, some examples. So, during vocab program, individuals stop to grab lunch on the way back from volunteering. If the payee sends some money to the vocab program via check each month, vocab program gives a set amount to the individual each day. The vocab program would need to keep a ledger because they'd write that they were giving them the $5 or $10 every day. If the individual is independently then spending that $5 or $10, the vocab program would not need to keep receipts. But if the vocab program holds the individual's funds, they hold, I didn't put an amount, they hold all of their monthly money, and then they go up to the counter and they assist them with making the purchase for their lunch, they would need to do a ledger and receipts because they are actually paying on behalf of the individual and holding, the individual isn't responsible for the funds, you guys are. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, they're strong on that when I had my survey
yeah.
last year.
So during an ADS program, individuals go to the grocery store, make a purchase. If the individual uses funds that they keep in their own wallet and the DSP stands next to them to support them with counting their change, the program does not need to keep ledgers or receipts. If the DSP holds the individual's money and assists them with paying for their items and then holds their change, the program does need to keep a ledger and needs to keep receipts. And then this is, I believe, the last example. An individual's parent or residential provider hands the NMT driver $20 for personal spending at the ADS program. The NMT driver is going to need to document on a ledger that they received that $20, and then they're going to have to also document when they gave it to the ADS program that they're signing it out. So this is a lot of extra paperwork. It's not probably the easiest way to do things. The ADS staff will then need to document that they received the money on the ledger. And then the ADS staff is going to go on based on the sports and the ISP about how they hold the funds or give the person the funds. So,
And all that needs to be signed by the mom or the NMT driver.
the NMT driver needs to, they just got $20, they need to get a ledger out. I got $20 from whoever, from mom, from.
I thought earlier it said that the person who was sending the money in had that signed.
Yeah, that's,
Like the
You're
mom would have to send in a piece of paper with the $20 saying, here's $20, I'm sending it in my signature.
Yeah, except for mom is actually handing you $20 in this scenario.
So mom doesn't have to sign it if she's handing it. But if she gives it to the client and then.
it sounds like she should sign it just because the rule seems slightly
Yeah.
unclear.
The best case scenario would be mom signs it. We can't make mom do things because mom's not a provider in this scenario.
Yeah.
Mom's a provider that potentially like have a conversation about that. But the person responsible to make sure it's on that ledger and they keep track of it is anyone who's a provider in this scenario. So yes, best case scenario, mom, can you just sign this that you gave me $20? We're on the same page that this is $20? Yes. And these rules are going to protect you as a provider. When money goes astray, when somebody can't remember what they spent their money on, you're going to have the receipt, you're going to have a ledger about what happened to it, when, whatever. So
Can that ledger be combined with somebody else's, like the bus driver for the day has a ledger? Do they need a ledger for each person, or can it be like reconciled at the end, like, okay, this person gave me this money, like, or does that driver have to carry a different ledger for each person?
it's for each person
Okay.
because you got to keep their funds separate. Yeah. Is the end. I know you guys have had lots of questions and we are so far over, and there is a question online. What's up? All right,
Can you provide a list for the organizations that will donate items?
yes.
And the next question is, what does TA stand for in the new compliance tool page for?
Technical assistance. That would be, if that, I don't know which question that's on, but that is that UDD, if they come out, that's usually a grayed out question. That they're gonna provide technical assistance for like 6 months as they're rolling out additional training on something. And then at some point, they're gonna start citing for it. But you would actually get technical assistance if you had a provider compliance review in 6 months. Any other questions? Thank you guys for hanging in for so long. Yeah, and we'll send that stuff when we send out. Very for it.
Oh, okay. I'm Shalana from Essence Services.
Nice to meet you.
I didn't sign up online.
Yes, I was the archery musician. First